Crafty Xilonen will skate her enemies down, and today I'm here to tell you how to build her best. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So, what artifacts does this Smith of Notland's history desire? None other than 4-piece Cinder City. If you're playing supportive Xilonen, then this is 100% the way to go. This will allow her to offer your team a whopping 40% damage bonus, which is on par with a 1000 DM Kazuha. There is literally no better supportive artifact set option for her, so farm this one up for sure. 4-piece Archaic Petra would be your substitute, but then Xilonen herself has to pick up the Crystallized Shards for the buff. Plus, Petra only buffs one element at a time. As for DPS Xilonen, 4-piece Obsidian Codex is the way to go. It's in the same domain as Cinder City, so you'll be able to build up your support set as you go, which makes alternating easier. 40% free crit rate is no joke. You'll be able to invest far more into damage stats. The 2 pieces direct damage increase when you're in the Night Soul state also apply to her, as she will be in said state when she does her Geo-normal attacks. Great for DPS Xilonen. No other option will be better. You can technically take advantage of 4-piece Husk thanks to the def percent and Geo damage bonus percent that it provides, but her signature doesn't offer crit, nor does she ascend with it, so building a DPS set on a non-crit set is a little rough. 4-piece Nighttime Whispers is even rougher, because it doesn't provide you with any def percent. Xilonen doesn't really want the 2 pieces attack percent either. Sure, you can use it for the Geo damage bonus percent as a placeholder, but make sure to replace it with Obsidian Codex as soon as possible. 2-piece mix and match sets for support Xilonen include 2-piece def percent, Night Soul ER percent, and healing percent. For DPS Xilonen, it'd be 2-piece def percent, Night Soul damage percent, and Geo percent. As for main stats, simple. For a support build, go for ER percent, def percent, healing percent. These aren't really any stats you need for a supportive Xilonen. Cinder City procs its effects regardless of your stat spread, and def percent contributes to the quality of her healing. Her res shred is also independent of her stats, it's only dependent on your talent level. So the ER percent is to access her burst quicker in case of fanfare. Def percent is so that you have some sort of healing stat, and healing bonus percent will contribute to that. If you run her on Fav, you can consider a crit rate circlet too. You can also choose a def percent circlet instead if you want to max out her signature weapon's passive too. As for DPS Xilonen, go for def percent, Geo percent, crit percent. You simply go for a standard DPS build when it comes to your damage-based playstyle, nothing too complex here. For those curious, here's the difference between a Geo percent goblet and a def percent goblet. It's close enough. Plus you get some better healing if you need it. Otherwise, go for whatever has better substats in my opinion. A 2.5% difference is nothing to sweat over. As for substat priority, for a support Xilonen, go for this. You literally don't need anything else. This character is as simple as it gets builds-wise. As for her DPS build, go for this. In her DPS teams, her burst does damage instead of heal if you have less than 2 absorbed elements, which is why the ER is important. It loses a lot of value if you trigger the healing burst instead, which is no value for a DPS Xilonen build. Know that all of these damage ranking sheets throughout this video will be for DPS Xilonen. If you're playing her on a support build, then such math doesn't matter. Her healing mostly only matters for fanfare. You'll meet her ER requirements very naturally if you're a support playstyle user, as there are so few stats that you need to build her on. A Smith needs the right tools for the job. What'll Xilonen's be? No matter the playstyle, Peak Patrol Song will be her peakest choice. The def percent stick is huge for starters, so you'll have healing for days. Building def becomes way more meaningful on her at this stage, as she can provide even more damage bonus percent if you stack enough def stats on her. For DPS fans, she'll gain 10% damage bonus herself, then also get a def increase after attacking enemies. You get the best of both worlds with this incredible weapon option. Easily her greatest overall pick. Flute of Epzitzol will be a splendid budget option, as you get tons of def percent from it. This not long craftable was designed with her in mind, so naturally, it works quite well. Definitely a nice one for free-to-plays. You can also consider Favonius Sword for a support Lonen build thanks to the team-wide white particles. It also gives you ER to access your healing. It'll work. Funnily enough, support Lonen can also use Freedom Sworn. It's able to offer your comp some team-wide buffs. If you have consistent elemental application from off-field, you should be able to access the buffs. You need to do 2 reactions of Xilonen to get her buffs, so you should have some off-field elemental application already. Sack Sword is legit only an ER stick. Use Fav instead if you can for the white particles. Otherwise, yeah, this'll be fine. Free-to-play DPS Xilonen enjoyers can consider Harbinger of Dawn. It's really strong for her if you can keep her above 90% HP, but if you can't guarantee that you'll always be above that threshold, then it might fall off a little. Uraku Misugiri is also shockingly good for her as a DPS, so if you lose Patrol Song to this, no bother, because Uraku happens to be her second best 5-star option. Lots of crit percent, and she deals her damage through normal attacks, which Uraku benefits. Lovely option if you happen to come across it. All of her 5-star weapon options are worse, because this weapon banner has both of her preferred weapons. I'd not bother considering other choices because none will be as good as Uraku or Patrol Song damage-wise. If you're after support Xilonen, then this list doesn't apply to you. So, what wacky gang will be dancing the Xilonen sick beats? She has multiple archetypes: Hyper Carry, Double Geo, Mono Element, Plunge DPS, and DPS DPS. We'll go through each archetype one by one, then I'll provide some example teams. Now I'd like to start with Hyper Carry teams, and I will give a special focus to 2 specific units before talking about the archetype in general. This is what I like to call the Nervalet Celestia Killer Team. This is arguably the most powerful team coming out of Xilonen's release. It works because the cap provides her Res Shred, damage bonus, and extra healing for faster fanfare on top of Kazuha's own Res Shred plus buffing, while Farina is also mega buffing the team. Pair that with the indescribably powerful champion that is Nervalet, and you'll find yourself with one of the new strongest teams in the game. Nervalet mains, do not sleep on this choice. Then I must talk about Navia. If you do your rotation correctly, then she will become her new best installed secondary Geo partner. Xilonen doesn't apply Geo from off field, so make sure to use Navia's burst later in the rotation. Your first nuke will always have max shrapnel stacks, so by using her burst later, you gain more stacks while carrying out the rest of her rotation. That way, you still get what you need. If you're worried about missing full shrapnel stacks, don't. Her first 3 are the most important. The other 3 after that are only for damage bonus percent, which you will have more than enough of in your average Navia team. Think about it. Farina, Nighttime Whispers, Xilonen Proc and Cinder City, Peak Patrol Song, Verdict, that's a lot. So missing out on 15 to 30% damage bonus isn't that big of a deal. The Geo Res Shred is way too good to give up, and she can help out with fanfare generation as Xilonen houses healing abilities. This combo makes Navia a significantly stronger DPS, and considering that she was already good, yeah, you're in for a fun ride. When it comes to hyper teams in general, anywhere where Geo application does not ruin the team synergy, she will be an excellent buffer. After all, she is essentially Kazuha number 2. Literally any main DPS that you can think of will probably work very well with his DJ Cat Lady. She obviously won't work with Animo or Mono Geo hyper carries, as she needs to do elemental reactions in order to carry out her buffs. Example hyper teams include Nervalet, Farina, Kazuha, Xilonen, Navia, the Cat, Farina, Bennett, Ito, Farina, DJ, Arlecchino, Yolan, Bennett, Xilonen, Linny, Farina, Bennett, the Smith. Double Geo is simple enough. Stick her along with Kachina, Chiori, or Zhongli for a pretty strong core. I'd recommend the Geo Archon personally, because Cinder City can only proc once per member in the team, and there'd be no constructs for Chiori to work with. Kachina C4 can buff Xilonen though, which is nice. It's, as you'd expect, a very comfortable core which allows for high buffing, pushing Geo to its limits. Example cores include Xilonen Zhongli, Xilonen Kachina, Xilonen Chiori. You can even play Double Buffer, which is the duo of Kazuha and the Cat. However, only the Nervalet team really utilizes them at the moment. As for others I can think of, Linny, Bennett, Kazuha, Xilonen. Clorand, Kujosara, Kazuha, Xilonen. Much like Kazuha, she'll also be great for buffing all non-Geo mono element teams. Thanks to her Res Shred and damage bonus percent buffing, it doesn't matter what kind of mono team as long as it's not Geo so that Xilonen can elementally react. There will be no issues. Example teams include Linny, Bennett, Shangling, Xilonen, Kokomi, Farina, Yolan, Ocelot, Ayaka, Shenhe, Ganyu, Ancient Namecrafter. Plunge DPS is the main way that you'd effectively employ her as a damage dealer in this team. You'd still have enough reactions to access her buffing, and since Cinder City will always include Crystal Dice, she gets buffed too. Plus, her plunging is just decent in general. Another win for us Xianyun lovers. You'd also put her on Obsidian Codex and run Kachina with Cinder City in this case. Example teams include Xilonen, Kachina, Farina, Xianyun. If you want to play her as a free-to-play DPS, well, Kachina is a free-to-play unit, so she'll still be a core component of the team. You can then consider sticking free-to-play supports on the end to help contribute to the team's overall damage, such as double pyro to name an example. All the examples I gave are just that, examples. If you don't have any of the exact teams I mentioned, don't worry. There is a 99% chance that she will work in your desired team if they fit into the overview description I gave, as she has equal flexibility to Kazuha, if not even more so. Be experimental, have some fun playing around. Yet how does this groovy DJ work? Well, her regular non-Night Soul normal attacks deal 3 basic physical strikes. Very cool. If you're in her Night Soul state, her normal attacks can deal up to 4 geo hits during the Blessing state. She can't do charge attacks, but she can hit plunge and normal attacks in this state. This is how you play her as a DPS. As for her skill, it's very yap heavy, so I'm gonna condense it down. You start by roller skating around the place, entering the Night Soul Blessing state. She will have 3 crystals next to her. Geo is the standard, with the others being able to be Pyro, Hydro, Electro, and Cryo. The other 2 crystals will change to that element. So in a Vape team, you'd have 1 Geo crystal, 1 Pyro 1, and 1 Hydro 1. Once she reaches max Night Soul, she consumes these all and decreases the elemental res of nearby enemies for 15 seconds, which is longer than 4VV. She can trigger this even when she's off field. She can also do some real funky climbing stuff with her skill, and can even turn into an Ocelot when leaping on a cliffside. Nice, I thought she was an Ocelot. Looks like I was right. Minecraft reference? Well, her burst, Ocelotted Q point, is even more on the nose about that. Anyways, it'll heal you if you have 2 crystals activated with elements. If you only have 1 or less, then she'll deal AoE geo damage instead, before your mind travels to crystal shrapnel stacks. No, you'd rather have 2 other elements in your party, so that you can get the massive geo res shred. As for Ascension passives, simple. Her A1 allows her to generate more Night Soul through normal and plunging attacks if you have 2 non-geo crystals. Each one generates 35 points and you want 45. So you press her skill, which has basically 0 animation time, do 2 super quick normals, use her burst, then you swap off to do your DPS shenanigans. This field time is so short that it's the same as doing skill and burst on a support, then swapping off. Whereas for DPS Xilonen, if you've only got 1 or less crystals elementally activated, you'll deal 30% more damage through her normal and plunging attacks. Nice that this tends to both playstyles so well. Her A4 will have her trigger a Night Soul Burst-like effect once she hits max points. When a Night Soul Burst is triggered in general, Xilonen gains 20% more death. That's nice for the cat's healing if you're using her as a pure support, and neat for her numbers if you're using her as a main DPS. As for talent priority, simple. If you're a support Xilonen main, go for this. You want to focus on her skill the most, because it's where her res shred comes from. It depends on 0 stats whatsoever, only her talent level. You get 36% res shred when said skill is maxed out, so 4% less than 4VV in exchange for a much better uptime. Good stuff. Level her burst for heals, then her normal attacks are pretty much optional if you're using her as a support. For DPS Xilonen, go for this. Her skill's importance varies depending on whether you're getting enough elementally activated crystals or not. Either way, make sure her normal attacks get the attention they need, as they are the main mate of Xilonen's damage share if you're aiming to play her primarily for her DPS. Her burst also has nice damage contributions if you don't trigger her healing from her burst, so consider leveling it too. Wanna buy some jewels from her? Then time to talk Constellations. Her C1 is mostly a skill issue fix as it increases interruption res, plus it helps out her exploration, which is nice. More Night Soul time is also pretty cool for DPS Xilonen. Decent C1, but it's by no means necessary. This C2 is fantastically unique and useful. She will give different buffs to your teammates depending on what element they are. The HP percent buff for Hydro finally offers a cheaper HP buffer than C4 Xilonen, easily being the best buff here. Celestia Killer Nervalette teams will be eating diabolically well. This increases her skill level by +3. Nice, more res shred, you're a little above 4VV level now. This excellent C4 will offer extra team-wide damage on the whole. Great stuff. The increase to your burst isn't all that huge. More healing is nice, but her healing at C0 is fine. Definitely no necessity, only pick it up on the way to C6. This turns Xilonen into a significantly better DPS. Neat stuff. You will definitely pack more of a punch with this, but as always, it is by no means necessary. I'd rather go for Fontaine C6s over this, such as Arlecchino or Nervalette. Xilonen's high investment is solid. It's not mind-bogglingly broken, but it isn't horrendously bad either. If you're a Nervalette main, then the C2 is busted, let me tell you. Otherwise, I'd stick with C0 or 1. They're good constellations, but by no means necessary, as always. It's always really exciting when Genshin makes a new S-tier character, because this is a unit who will be relevant for months and months to come, spreading her name throughout all wonderful Genshin discussions. I'm really pleased with her kit. The fact that she's an S-tier unit on skates is even better, man. Definitely share your own thoughts on the character down below in the comments, and I'd love to hear what you all think so far. Hopefully this video was able to get your Xilonen skating all over her enemies. This has been Juice, signing out, and considering that she's an ocelot, what kind of Minecraft cat would she turn into?